ship that sails the sea is still a prison for the nights of me. But if we weep like Noah's Ark, I'll fly to the girl I love. And it's one more day on the great funnel line.
Well, the idea is that people show their own artwork in their own homes, and it was started 12 years ago. I've lived here since 1988, so a considerable amount of time, yeah. The idea really came from me participating in the Pittenweem Art Festival, which I have now done for I think around 14 years, and I thought just because we have these 6 small streets that perhaps we could do something similar to Pittenweem.
I've been taking part in the show from the beginning. That's 12 years now, and it's been great ever since.
And I've been involved from the beginning as well, mainly just with organising, helping to do that, and then more recently I started to do the history exhibit.
I'm a plumbing and heating engineer, and I just try to paint as much as I can in between.
And I'm a project manager in various disciplines.
Most people, it's because of the crowd that come are just so nice.
Yeah, so positive, yeah.
And they're, they enjoy it. They're very appreciative of, entering everybody's house and the different places and the different art. So it's nothing but enjoyable to host it as well.
Some of the places you go into and it can be difficult to know what is...
Yeah, what's the show and what's the kitchen?
Yeah.
But it's definitely just the vibe of the whole thing all together. It's an exhibit, it's a community event, and it's just the whole thing together.
I never got involved in the community when I lived in Canada. But here, I think because of the size of Edinburgh too, it's like you feel it's easier to get involved. So when Jill had this idea and she sent that first leaflet around, it was just, yes, this is what a brilliant idea, how amazing, and really just jumped on the chance to be involved.
Well, it was back in 2013 when I decided to definitely stay for the weekend at the Colony of Artists in Edinburgh. I was determined to see each and every home, and obviously to see how our school has been involved. And it's only then that I've discovered that the school has been on the map of the Colony of Artists from the very start. And we talked about at length how it was really dedicated just, the gym hall was the heart of the exhibition. Then I think at the same time the inspectors from the Education Scotland arrived in the school, and they've also commented that it's an incredible, innovative initiative to have the school being involved as part of the Colony of Artists. So I put these two together, the report from Education Scotland and my experience of being exposed to the buzz and to the incredible energy of the Colony of Artists, and decided to make this step further to initiate the Artist in Residence project. It's a year-round project, relies on the extending and contributing to the global phenomenon of artist residencies, and with the only difference that it's the base of this residency is the school. It's a inner city mixed environment school in Edinburgh. We started with artists living in the colonies, initially just 5 of them, and 3 or 4 years later we have worked with about 30 artists. This work here could be attributed to the very, very first initial artist in residence in 2006, Jane Phillips. Had this urge to create something for the playground environment, to make it really into something much better than the Victorian concrete. So what she did is, we called it the Woodland, and she ran workshops with parents as well as children at the time, and all the individual woodland creatures here being based on individual designs and ideas coming from everybody. Artist in residence, one of our first 5 for the first year when we started, Lucy Ketchin Edmondson. She really wanted to do a mosaic project of her own, but cited an outdoor play area for the nursery because they really needed a little bit of colour and excitement in the area. You'll see it why. Because that was just about the only place where Jane Phillips and her team, they didn't go into. So that's exactly what we did.
So it was Ash Denham, who's the local MSP for that area, just got into contact with the school and said that they would like something for their office that was made by the children, and so I asked the children what they thought they would like to present, and they said we'd like to have our Edinburgh.
We're really lucky to have all of these artists here. Teachers have got to be really good at lots of different things. It's really hard to have any one teacher who's an expert in a particular area, so it's a really great opportunity to have an expert in art or their sort of subject come in and teach and offer their expertise.
I was really interested in archaeology and history as well, so I kind of went to study that. And then I ended up working in that for about 5 years, just digging holes in the ground. I enjoyed about 5% of it. I enjoyed working on an actual interesting site, but mostly I wasn't really enjoying it, and I kept meeting people who were artists or working in art, and so I was like, maybe I should go back and study that, and a friend told me that I should go and do a foundation year. And then there was that realisation of, oh yeah, I can go and do something else, can't I? And I was a bit more Edinburgh based, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And I started looking at derelict spaces, and then I started working with found objects. So it was, I like things that had a function or served a purpose, but I really like a repetition of an object. It's not hard to find junk. And I'm interested in history of places, or history of objects, or And I'm a colleague artist as well, just having a chance, for me, it's really nice to be able to show the work in my own home. And it's not, some people find it, a lot of people, that's what they say, they find it really stressful. But I don't find it stressful. I find it like a chance to kind of control it. I can do it. I can set up whenever I want, and I can do what I want in my own home. And I might show. I've got a painting, but I don't think I've got time to finish it, and it's not finished, so probably won't show that. But if I get a chance, it's nearly finished, so I might work on it. A few years ago we had open studios here, so I'd done all these paintings of India, and I'd been to Varanasi. So Varanasi is like the place where you go to die if you can, and you want to be kind of cremated on the banks of the Ganges. It's like it's like a big holy city. And I'd done some drawing and created a painting, well, quite a few paintings, and one of them was hanging downstairs. and someone came to talk to me about this painting, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I really like that painting. I'm quite interested in buying it. Could you tell me a bit more?" And I just started talking about death, dead bodies, and I could see their face change.
I know.
I was like, "Note to self: do never mention death."
We realised that if we were going to do it over a weekend, we were busy in our own homes, we weren't going to be able to see the other people's artwork, so that was why the Friday night came about. Obviously the first few years the art walk was much smaller. We were only doing 9, 12 people, and so we could take our time and didn't start maybe till 8 o'clock. Tonight we had to start at the back of 6 and it could go until about 11:30.
I think this is my 3rd or 4th year. No, it's a bit surreal, but it's nice because everyone's really appreciative. Quite a lot of people live locally, and all the houses are the same, so people are kind of looking at, well, I could do that with my curtains. A little bit. There's a lot of kitchen jealousy going on, I think. It's your game, I think, yeah. So, no, it's nice though. And I think more and more people do it every year, so I've been involved with it from the minute I've lived here. Not many places in a city where you can walk down the street and know everyone. No, it's a good way to showcase your work, and it's something to aim for every year and keep you making stuff, which is the main thing. Consistent line was inconsistency before. I changed it every year to just the bees, and then people started calling it like the Bee Festival and continued that, so now the bees are a bit sacred, so every year the colony theme develops a little more. And like originally the masons that built the house, their logo was actually a hive, so it's quite a nice link to the past as well.
This is the second time that I've ever exhibited. Nervous, it's kind of scary, but fun. It helps you develop your confidence, and then it helps you develop your skills in what you do. So I think it's a worthwhile venture to do. And it's a lot of fun. It's nice to meet the public, nice to hear feedback, both negative and good, about your photographs. So I just like to teach and learn. I've seen this exhibit for a few years now, the Colony of Artists, a few years, because we live here. Thought, right, give it a try, because family keeps saying photographs are nice, they do well, why not just show them? So I thought, give it a shot. It's given me more of a critical eye. It's kind of allowed me to take the emotion out of my photographs, so I can see them from a public's point of view. And if I can think what the public would want, that's what I'm kind of aiming for. So it's allowed me to be a wee bit more professional. I used the public's opinion to kind of develop myself and grow. A bit more confident. Good. Looking forward to it, because I remember the buzz that we had last year at the end of the exhibition. It was just a lot of fun. It was just everybody was hyped up, and it was a nice feeling, so I thought, right, try again this year. I got a day job, but I've been painting for quite some time. I started off with digital art, generative art, because I just like playing around with computer programs, and I started creating art with it. And creating art with a computer taught me to paint. So then I've been painting, and it tends to be
more abstract sort of stuff. I've kind of moved into semi-abstract landscape, cityscape is kind of a lot of what I'm doing. And squares. I'm a head teacher, but I have a sabbatical this year. Oh yeah. So this is the year that really to try and push that and try and get some sales. So this is a brilliant start to my year. Okay, so I believed that computers could do something way better than what I saw back in about 2000 when I was seeing it. And so I didn't know what I wanted it to do, so I just thought I'll program a little drawing package and I'll have my hands in the guts, and when I know what I want to do, I'll be able to do it. I went to a friend and got a watercolour lesson, and driving back I was thinking what he taught me, it was mostly about mixing colours, and I thought, I can do that on my program. I can make a palette and I can pick up a bit of colour and I can mix it with that colour and I can mix it with this colour. And before I had it, I had these gorgeous colours. I thought, oh, I just love those colours. Now I've got to find something better. So I thought, okay, now I've got to get a better brush than just like a pen. So I started programming this brush, and it was quite nice. It kind of faded out at the edge. You could get different thicknesses, different angles on it. But it kind of cracked. I thought, oh dear, there's something wrong here and I can't find it. So I produced a bit of code so it would draw a wiggle so I could spot what was causing it. I wrote that. I'd coded the drawing package, so I had my hands in the drawing package. So I coded that, okay, it only breaks when you do it really wiggly. So I thought about the physics of my arm, and I produced a bit of code that kind of mimicked the physics of my arm. And I just put in another level of differential just for fun. And it made this really beautiful wiggly line. And I thought, forget about that crack, I like the line. And the longer I drew the line, the more I liked it. And so I just started coding more and more, and then I have these beautiful textures, but it was just kind of like an all-over texture, like grass or bamboo or something like that. And I thought, it needs to be different in different places. And I think, what can I produce as a random function that will always be defined? And I thought, neural network. So I put a bit of code that mimicked the brain and got that to control the way that the brush painted with the dynamics of an arm. And yeah, it was really cool. But all the time I was looking at it thinking, is that what I want? I want it to do a bit more this, I want it to be a bit more like that. And I was looking at nature around me thinking, I want to mimic that, how do I get this, do that? And then after a while I thought, I want to paint, because I suddenly know what I want to paint. Because I just spent time looking at the computer and looking at the world around me, thinking, how's it put together? My degree is physics, and there's quite a bit of computing in that degree. So science looks at the world around about us and tries to encapsulate it in some way, tries to make sense of it. And art is just another way of making sense of the world around about us. It's kind of a more emotional way, and through this process I've got much more connected emotionally. But yeah, it's just science celebrates the world around about us, and I think art is the same. I think it's really, yeah.
Thank you.
Sometimes I just can't even understand where I am in the mud. I mean, what do you mean, what am I doing here? I don't know. But I know what I want to do, I think. And I know I'm going to get there. Oh, who am I? Who are you? What was I supposed to do? Where will I be? Where will you be tomorrow? You're too much, and he's so cool. And do you think I mean, I know I am. I don't know, you know? I know you know. I think. You know? I think. You know?
It's very good this year. They're lining up at the door. It's a steady crowd. It's very good. Now it's much more comfortable. The first couple of years, you're a bit, you know. I think it's more difficult for them. They're always like, oh, is it okay to come in? I says, yes, I have invited you. Come on in, but you'll see that they're just a bit, you know. Yes, some people have like taken apples from my tree and sit down on the bench and enjoy the evening. But you know, that's fine, of course. We're opened up our homes to them. But yeah, you see people, they'll take time, sit down on the sofa, enjoy the atmosphere. They also like to see the houses. So, you know, they're looking at the cornices and the color of your walls, and that's fine. It's great. That's what I would do.
I just gotta get out of this place. Listen, you gotta slow down. Take it though, boy. You gotta slow down. God, no. Take me out of here. Will I be? What can I see? My God, I'm falling on my knees. Please help me, Lord. Take me away.
I work as communications officer in the International Centre for Mathematical Sciences. So you can see from the work that sometimes my ideas cross over mathematical concepts in some of it, and some of it's portraits of scientists and mathematicians. I've partly been inspired by my work, partly by the history of science interests and a passion for the old space programme. There's a shawl on the wall behind you which is actually based on this image from the Cassini space programme probe that was sent crashing to its demise in Saturn about a week ago. The little Harris tweed brooches are very free-flowing, almost like painting with fibres, and just adding the fibres as you think they fit. So it's quite analogue, really. The other geometric ones are cut fairly precisely, but I've always, and again, my family background is my grandmother taught me to knit when I was a child. My mother was an upholsteress and made clothes for all of us. I started making my own clothes because I couldn't find what I wanted to wear in the shops. I started making more artistic ideas in that technique, but the technique was always in my repertoire, I suppose. So there's different kinds of influences going on there, but it's the same. It's all part of a big mess of stuff that is me.
I've got the blues in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I've paid my dues all over this town. I've chopped wood to put food on the table.
So it's all, for me, it's all fused glass. It starts as sheets that are essentially like windows, but they come in different colors. And I cut them into the shapes that I want, fuse it together in a kiln at about 800 degrees.
Somewhere between 700 and 810 Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of the texture and imagery comes from diamond mill engraving.
Really beautiful, brilliant things. It's
Thank
so
you.
cool. I've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, they're totally weird.
Work as kind of unconsciously as I can, so I'm not drawing or sculpting pieces with a result in mind. I start with a piece of material or the equivalent of an ink blot or something on a bit of paper, and then I tend to just follow where that goes. I'm most interested when I show work is really what other people think about it. It's not what I think about it. So I have like 5 different jobs. I'm also a counsellor, as in therapist. I have kids, busy life, dogs, do other jobs, so I've done all kinds of other things alongside that. I'm absolutely an artist as well as I'm absolutely these other things. I have to be both. My art is quite, apart from this kind of thing, it's quite an isolated experience, and so there's something for me about also wanting to be with people, wanting to have a really, meaningful connection in a person-to-person way. So maybe that's how the art and the other work, the sort of social care stuff, fit with me. That seems to just feel right as a combination. Once I was doing the work that felt right, I absolutely wanted to get it out there. I had a compulsion to, show it. I just don't want to stick it in a cupboard, and I couldn't do that. So my work's really come together in the last, I call it 5 years, where I've kind of really, this is going to sound whatever, but really kind of found myself, or really stuff has integrated into being the work that I want to do. It's amazing, it's really fantastic. I've exhibited in other places and had other events, but actually nothing as busy as this. I think yesterday we're talking about 600 people came through here, and so I've been blown away with how many people. And I've just seen a guy come back in who was here yesterday, who I don't know. He's obviously come back with friends. So no, it's amazing. I'm just totally wonderful to be part of this, and really happy.
Hold back the river, let me look in your eyes. Hold back the river so wide. Stop for a minute and be by your side. Hold back the river, hold back. Hold back the river, let me look in your eyes. Hold back the river so wide. Stop for a minute and be by your side. Hold back the river, hold back. Lonely water, lonely water, won't you let us wander? Let us hold each other. Lonely water, lonely water, won't you let us wander? Let us hold each other.
Actually have just completed a degree in sculptures, having regretted not doing it earlier, and so actually the work that I got here, the stones, the paper stones, are part of what my degree show work was in the summer. Walking around in East Lothian, and there's a lot of red sandstone there that erodes really quite amazingly, quite spectacular sometimes in stone walls. They almost completely hollow out so there's just spaces where some of the stones were. So it's a combination of walking in amongst that and my own thoughts on memory and memories about things that used to be there and aren't there anymore, and the sort of, I don't know, any emotional content that I can have. So it could be somebody that's died, or it could be something that's passed and life's moved on, or whatever. So I suppose for me the stones slightly came to represent memories. The fact that these stones are hollow, so they're just full of air, but they do have a shape. So in that way, a little bit like, memory makes its mark, but it's not necessarily visible or doesn't actually have substance anymore. I think with things that are a shape that everybody knows really well, like stones, people will have their own associations. I don't know. It didn't really make me anxious this year.
The river opened her mouth and spat into a vast sea, larger and bluer than a cloudless sky, muscular, prodigious, immortal. But our vessel was invulnerable. It was well built. The boat rocked me into sleep, and I floated through a deep dream, smooth sailing through the castle in the air.
I've lived here for a while, for about 5 years, but this is the first year I've exhibited. Been a happy sort of viewer and just audience member, so to speak, for a few years. And I do photographic stuff in digital and analog, and I also do some digital sort of experimental video work. And it's a bit of a brain bender. We swap the X direction, like the horizontal direction of the picture and the time, and in it with a new video, and you can still see people and cars moving around. But it has strange properties and things get squashed into unusual shapes. And everyone in the video faces left, or all the cars face left, even though they're going left to right and right to left still. So I'd like to do more of that next year. It's been really interesting. One of the best things is just chatting to people who've asked about the photos and what I've got on display. My day job is I write iPhone and iPad apps. I go around companies just around the area and help them write applications. So it's quite a different thing in my own time to just have things like photography. Well, that's the thing. When you do something, when for your main day job or your occupation, you do things that are much more based in sort of facts, and there's a right and a wrong. It's a really interesting diversion and an exercise for your brain to do things that are have more creative input and are more free. And I like the marriage between trying to use things like computers and numbers and maths, say, to make artistic things where there's some mathematicsy things involved, say, but then you guide them to get the images that you want and use them to explore things such as these million-point sculptures, and you find the ones you want that look interesting. So it's an interesting meeting of art and science, I guess. it's nice because people are really interested in the houses, you know, here as I was before I lived here. And yeah, I mean, my own memories of going to the colonies before I lived here to this exhibition was being really interested in the quirky houses and how different people decorated them, and some of the really interesting furniture they found and put in little nooks and crannies. And so it's interesting remembering that before I ever lived here. And then today people are walking in looking at my kitchen, and my living room and all that, and wondering what they think about my place. I think I'll definitely use the whole year to do more prep, and I'll go more into the digital stuff like the million point sculptures and the strange space-time sort of video rotation stuff. But yeah, I'm definitely going to put a lot more work and make use of the year to develop those.
Beginning is from broken found umbrellas on the street, and these breaking anyway.
Exhibited at the Colony of Artists 3 times before. Yeah. Actually mainly photography and drawing, but it often does involve or end up with an aspect of installation, which these umbrellas are. It's because it's a way I sort of begin to document something, whether it's an umbrella that I find on the street, I've done that through photographs, or a building that I might draw. It usually begins a process that then develops into a piece I'll eventually exhibit. Got like a lot of work that I've been doing over a long time, and also have another full-time job teaching and working with adults with learning disabilities doing artwork. So at the moment I'm spending quite a lot of time going through the sort of body of work that I've got and pulling and putting that together, as opposed to kind of exhibiting it. It just feels like I've had to go back to the drawing board a bit and really work with what's there and collate it. Something like the umbrella piece, you know, it's a long-term theme that I've worked on over 15 years, and in a way that's an exploratory piece in that I sort of, whenever I come across a new umbrella or I hear a story like I have just a few minutes ago about yellow umbrellas, that sort of adds another piece to that work. And so I suppose it is quite open and quite exploratory, but at the same time it does start with quite, you know, a clear idea, and I do know I'm open to new ideas and new things coming in that and from that, but I sort of do know where I'm going with it as well. I find that, you know, working with people with learning disabilities, it's, you know, one side of it is that it's sort of, you know, very inspiring, kind of, because you work in a group with the people with learning disabilities, but with the other staff too, you know, in teams and in a group, kind of, you're working together brings me something different and sort of helps me to move my own ideas on as well. It brings me something other than I find working just on my own. And yeah, I think I've felt more and more over the years, and as time passes too, that working with others to share my art skills and, yeah, I suppose give something back that I've learned as well, kind of, is also something that I love. Yeah.
I was in Mull on the beach to barbecue, chatting to somebody, and we were talking, and I was just saying how I loved being there, and you know, what do I love about that, and you know, the wide open skies and that, and I was kind of denigrating being in the city, and he said, but there's beauty there as well. I thought, oh yes, I should see beauty wherever I am. So I came back to Edinburgh with the desire to recapture the love that I had when I was a student and start seeing what's so beautiful. And I did some very sort of realistic paintings of Edinburgh, and it's grown from there. So it's about finding beauty where I am. Yeah, I feel a lot more at home in the city, but just it brings me life being here, and just walking down the street to work, and I just look around and just go, this is nice. I really came back to faith at university, discovered the gift of the Spirit and speaking in tongues, and churches where you would dance and clap and do all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that exuberance is important, but I think also the quiet meditative alongside it, and the rational stuff as well. You want to let your spiritual life impact every area of your being. But see the squares though, they're kind of a little bit like windows, a little bit like being able to see something beyond, but they're very much there, and it's like finding the presence of God where you are, and just saying, and I was talking earlier about enjoying the city, but I mean it's a very spiritual thing, and just I think God is beauty, and I think just to connect with God in the world that you are, his immanent presence rather than his transcendence. So yeah, that's a lot about the possibility, seeing beyond, but sometimes I have visions of things. Angels, healing streams. There's a particular thing that I saw in one time. There was a whole bunch of people that had come together that had been in some churches that there had been a bit of bad feeling between and fallout. We were all together in this place, and it was just like there was this waterfall of light all over us. These kind of like almost like diamonds, or just fragments of colour falling all over us. It's like healing. And that's part of what I'm putting into my paintings, is that my main mission plan for my sabbatical is recover, and if I do that, then that will be good. Very draining life I've been going through between work and between home. My wife is chronically ill for many years, but she's completely well now. So that's great. 23 years with Emmy, about 11 or 12 years in a wheelchair. We moved church because she couldn't get up the stairs any longer, and we found one with a lift. So I started going to this other church, and it had a prayer team that would just wouldn't say we're finished there. We'd just keep praying. We'll pray next week, the next week, the next week. And she started to change and to improve bit, and then 1st of September, is it 4 years ago now? She woke up and thought, oh, something's different, which is always bad with ME because it changes and it's always worse every time it changes. And she kind of did this lying in bed doing this mental inventory, what's wrong kind of with each thing, and she got to her toes and thought, there's nothing wrong. And she kind of felt a bit scared about getting out of bed because would something drop off? And she got out of bed and she felt fine all day. And then that evening she said, oh, my legs feel jumpy, let's go for a walk. So I went to get the wheelchair. She said, no wheelchair. Like a shock. She's been doing a lot of painting that has been therapy because, she's still physically great, but she's still working on some inner things, and she does a lot of, and that's a complete change in her painting recently, from painting pretty things to actually painting what's happening inside her. And I'm just painting from what comes from down here, and I usually kind of think I'm getting this right when I start laughing. I look at it and I laugh, and the joy comes up, and it's coming. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's just allowing that painting to flow through me, as it were. It's therapy for me, actually. Quite a lot of the time I'm painting stuff and then I look back at it and think, oh, I've just painted about the way that I felt shut off, and now I'm opening up. And those squares, they look a little bit like, if you imagine a cube with the sides taken off, it's like the back and the front, and it's like I'm coming out the box, and you can see a kind of transparency through there, and again I'm letting people see what's within, and it's, I don't know, it's how it's changing me, but it's part of my process of changing, becoming more open to people.
Fulani Sadi Sadi, Fulani Fulani Sadi, Fulani Fulani Bambara Kaina, Sadi Sama, Walali Walali.
No, I think this is probably the only exhibition I do. I don't know about Charlotte, if she does other ones as well, but this is probably the only one. Usually I kind of do painting, drawing or something like that, and so it's a deadline that kind of I work towards. It was just like a moment to focus on, a kind of an inspiration to get stuff done. Life's busy, it's good to have a focal point, but also it's on my doorstep, I live around the corner. You're showing your art to people who live nearby.
Yeah, that last one.
And it was a great way of getting to know other artists and other creative people who live nearby to begin with. I think this is for, I have my work in a gallery on Colonsay in an island farm, so kind of I work and put my stuff, my paintings there, and then it kind of was just something that was so enjoyable that it's kind of hard to give up. I am probably normally just acrylic and pen and ink, charcoal, so it's usually flat art, but I've done quite a lot of mud rock when I'm teaching. And I guess more just a relaxation thing. Charlotte and I are offering people fire sessions, and we've called them Phoenix Fire Sessions. Last year, Charlotte and I made some artwork together. It was, I used mud rock and she used felt, and we created a kind of a small sculpture that used felt and mud rock. We called it Transitions, and it was the 3 stages of a dandelion, so kind of just about change. And at the end of the Colony of Artists, we were looking at this piece that wasn't hers and wasn't mine, and we're like, well, what do we do with it? And we thought, well, let's burn it. So we sat down after the event and burnt it. And the whole kind of experience of watching something you've made and created together burn was kind of nostalgic, liberating, I don't know, a lot of different emotions. And we started to talk about how could you let other people experience that, or how could you turn that into something. So that's how it started. And this was just, I guess, a project we started doing together, or yeah, offering up. To be me, I was hoping to do all of me. It's just going to be a head, I think. There's just a secret.
done by Sandy Moffat. People often like the same painting. You know, there's always one or two paintings that you could have sold several times. Either that, or it's people coming and saying, "Oh, it's been sold." It means they don't have to worry about buying it. But anyway, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that's so interesting about showing your work to the public yourself rather than through a gallery. Not that there's anything wrong with showing through a gallery. And I just genuinely think that most people come to an event like that are only really interested in seeing art and experiencing that. You know, I think people enjoy meeting the artists as well. I think it's almost about as big as it can be, because you couldn't get. There is times when you can barely see the other side of the room. You know, the amount of people that are actually in these houses. So I don't think I'd want it to get much bigger than it is. It's like being at school, isn't it? And you maybe get praised for doing something, whether it's music or sport or art, and I think that kind of encourages you maybe to pursue that. But I think a lot of people get talked out of going to art college by worried parents thinking, what on earth are they going to do when they come out? I did two placements, and I think it was quite enlightening to see, you know, you did it with an art therapist, and it was quite enlightening to see how people responded to using art to express themselves. Because one of the words that I visited and took the lead in running the art groups was a ward where a lot of people had attempted suicide, so had been quite depressed, and it was really quite interesting, and some of the images were quite striking. You know, one woman on an A4 sheet of paper had drawn herself about this size, being covered in snow. She just felt suffocated. So it was. I found it very interesting and quite rewarding. And the other placement was working with people with learning disabilities, and that's the first time I'd ever done that type of, worked with that client group. I don't know, I think for me there's a lot of it's to do with colour and just my total admiration for nature, and I find it very peaceful, painting flowers, and I suppose buildings, in fact anything that I draw. It's trying to, I suppose, reproduce in some kind of shape or form something else, and you know, there's a certain amount of pleasure from being able to, and you know, obviously it's a challenge too. It can be a challenge to try and reproduce something as well as you can.
And Jill has recently rejoined the committee as well, and that's been really good because, you know, as one of the founding members, along with Bill, you know, they bring that experience and that knowledge to the group. So I think we're in a good position for it to continue for a while. But yeah, in the future there are going to have to be other people who sort of step up and say that they're going to take over, because, you know, as older members are not getting any younger.
I think every year it's more positive. It might not have been as busy as previous years, but it was a good crowd, good people, and it just everybody had a good time, and that's the main thing. And yeah, maybe we can develop other things like more street art or get the kids involved. You know, there's always little ideas going on. I mean, we start the year with, you know, a list like that of ideas, and if we get 2 or 3 done, we're happy. So we'll always have something to look forward to the next year.
And the community, there was and still is such a good community here. Like, you know your neighbours, you talk to them, and that's really what, you know, drew us. I mean, we were only in the house 5 minutes, and the neighbour next door, who's now sadly passed away. I mean, she was over right away, you know, one of these old ladies, and just, oh hi, how are you, and welcome to the neighborhood, and it was great, and just so friendly and welcoming. That when you look at the garden, it's full of birds, and you know, there's hedgehogs still like in the neighborhood,
foxes,
and it's just really, really nice that this little pocket is here. So even though you're in the middle of the town, you are surrounded by nature. I did history at university, so I've always been interested in the past, and I've always taken an interest, you know, in Edinburgh's history and in Abbey Hill's history, and this was just maybe more formalizing it, and again, it was a way to connect with the people who maybe didn't come to the exhibition. So I went around door to door and spoke to every single person in the colonies to ask them how long they'd been here, if they had photographs, and you know, just tried to get a sense of who it was that actually lives here now, and getting these stories from the past.
Some of the history that you know, the industry that was here was phenomenal, like glass making, forge, you know, and that's why these houses were built for the workies. So
I mean, certainly there used to be a lady that lived upstairs, Rita Cowan, and she had lived there for nearly 80 years. But she used to say to me, oh, all these professionals moving into the area, and in a way that was, oh, you know, these homes aren't for those type of people. And I think the older people who remember it as, you know, more of a working class place probably are quite astonished at the change. But I don't think there's any animosity or any sort of feeling of, oh, who are you coming in here? I don't think, I've never had it or felt that. And last year it was wonderful. This woman came in, and she looked quite stern when she came in. She just sort of was walking around with like a very stern look on her face. And then she very quickly left. And then she came back about half an hour later with somebody else. And she came over and she just burst into tears. And she was born on Rossi Place, and she grew up in the area. And this was her first visit back to Edinburgh in 25 years. She was living in Australia, and she just happened to be walking by and saw this, and she just couldn't believe it. She was just so overwhelmed with the emotion of seeing all these photographs, all the way she remembered the area, and it was very touching. And I think I thought she looked stern, and what it was, she was so emotional that she had to leave. And it was that kind of reaction is just, you know, you can't, you know, I mean, I almost feel like crying just even, you know, thinking about it, because it was just such a wonderful reaction. She was so happy. Yeah, I mean, we haven't been back to Toronto, where we're from, in a long time, and each time we do go back, there's less of a connection, because the changes there are so rapid. There's hardly anything left the way it was when we were young. And I think that's why, for me, it was so important to know the history of where I'm living, because I needed to feel that connection, that to be part of something, because the Canadian connection is always there, but it's, you know, the ties are not as strong.
Basically it's well, less and less family sort of to go back and visit, so it'll always be there. You know, you just have to arrive on a visit and spend a little time, and you think you haven't left, except for all the physical changes. But no, definitely, you know, we live here. Being involved in this does make it a lot more homey. As an artist community, which this involved into, we would have never thought of it. in Canada.
Yeah, and it is something that I think has helped feel, for me anyway, to feel like I'm part of the community. Yeah, I think it's like coming up to half my life I'll have lived here in Edinburgh. So yeah, I'm Canadian, but I also think of myself as Scottish, really. You're probably younger than, you probably haven't been alive as long as I've lived here. And it's funny how you can just come to a place and just feel that it's home. And I think that's why we ended up staying, because we had no plans to stay forever, but it's going to be forever.
If we're not kicked out by Brexit.
Pleasing object. I made it burn. Thought you'd met a guy. What am I going to do with it?
Like the soldier in my dream, I can feel the cold. I can feel the rain. I realize the change. Flying like a raven, life is much more than it seems. Dying to find an answer, still you must wait your turn to fly. I can feel the cold. I can feel the rain. I realize the change. I can feel the cold. I can feel the rain. I realize the change. Flying through the mountain, in the ocean.